Okay, good afternoon. Today here we got a 2010 Chevy Equinox with 110,000 miles on it. What was the situation? Situation was missing the number 3 cylinder. Turns out to be a burnt exhaust valve. The number 3 cylinder, burnt exhaust valve. However, months prior to that, I was noticing a little bit of abnormal oil consumption. So with that, I was just monitoring it and tracking it until one day I drove it on the highway and came the scenario where I started losing compression, or the vehicle was driving as though it was missing. And then that's when I found that I had dropped I burned the number 3 valve. So what I did before I tore it apart was I did a compression check on it. And a few months back, I say around the beginning of the year, all across the board, the cylinders all had 180 psi. And at that time, the truck had about 94,000 miles. No, about 90,000 miles. And then before I tore it apart, this number 1 cylinder had 150. Number 2 had 160, and then it'll go down to 150. Number 3 was 0, and then number 4 was at 90, and it'd go down to 70 psi. So with that, I did my leak down test and come to determine that, hey, it's more than just the piston rings that's been common to these 2.4 liter engines in this year vehicle. So then I did find a burnt valve, exhaust valve, in the number 3 cylinder head. So upon further investigation, after tearing it apart, I also noticed that my timing chain guide had broke apart. It fell apart here, and the pieces were here and also in the pan, which I eventually just dropped the whole oil pan and found the rest of the pieces. Also, I noticed that the catalytic converter was deteriorating and getting clogged up. So I assumed, what I'm thinking was, because of the oil blow-by, oil was going up into the cylinder head, out the exhaust, into the catalytic converter, burning up, melting, clogging up the catalytic converter. Eventually, the heat that was coming from the combustion chamber out the exhaust valves had nowhere to go, so it was coming back, plus the combustion chamber. So I had heat going from up into the valve and from the back side, from back pressure, resulted in the bad catalytic converter. And I believe that's why the exhaust valve number 3 had literally just melted. I don't have that cylinder. I went and took it to a machine shop, got it fixed. I do have a picture of it though, and if I can, I'll figure out a way to put a picture on here. So anyways, I just got my head back from the machine shop, and they said they noticed that a lot of the exhaust valves on the cylinder head, the valve guides were actually loose. They said it was somewhat of a common problem for those aluminum heads. However, that makes me think that that's probably another reason why I lost so much compression. On another note, I also noticed that when I had the engine at idle, like most all vehicles, I'm getting positive crankcase ventilation. However, on this particular vehicle, I was getting excessive amount of crankcase ventilation, and sometimes I get like a milky substance. Thinking maybe I had a bad head gasket, but I wasn't losing any coolant at the time, so I just kind of dismissed it. And then that's just another reason for me to suggest that, hey, the piston rings were going bad anyways, because obviously when the piston's going up into the combustion chamber, I'm getting blow-by back into the crankcase, and it's coming out an excessive amount of positive crankcase ventilation. So I went ahead and took out the pistons from the bottom. I dropped the oil pan, and then took out the pistons, cleaned them up very, very good. You can tell it was some within the rings, they're burnt. Some of the oil is burnt inside the piston ring, so I cleaned that up real good. put everything back together. I just got the rings. I'm gonna put the rings back together, put the pistons back in place, and then I will obviously put that cylinder head back on top and torque everything to specs. But ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions or any, oh yeah, I remember this, or mine was doing that, or whatnot, please don't hesitate to put it on this video, and if I can, I'll answer it, or I can, say, yeah, I remember this, or by the way, that was happening to my vehicle as far as symptoms are concerned. So originally, this vehicle did start off as a excessive oil consumption. My wife drives this vehicle, and she's driving it about, I'd say about 600 or 700 miles a week, and in between oil changes, I'd have to monitor it every week, and I was losing a good 1 to 2 quarts within that time. However, it didn't smoke, and I believe the reason why it didn't smoke was because that catalytic converter was getting clogged up, and so on and so forth. And then unfortunately it resulted in a bad head. However, the piston rings, I believe, were still going bad because of the excessive crankcase ventilation. All right, thank you.